Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're unleashing the rage virus and sprinting straight into the chilling world of 28 Days Later. This 2002 British horror film reinvigorated the zombie genre with its terrifying speedsters, gritty realism, and haunting imagery. But how much do you really know about what went on behind the scenes? We're uncovering the secrets that brought this apocalyptic vision to life. So board up your windows and don't make a sound, and let's run through 20 things you never knew about 28 Days Later. Before a single word of 28 Days Later was written, screenwriter Alex Garland pitched the idea to producer Andrew McDonald over a meal at a pizza restaurant. Garland pitched it by saying, "Look, I've got an idea for a film. It's about running zombies. It's set in daylight and it takes place in London." McDonald said, "Oh, sounds really cool," and that was all he needed to get started on writing a script. Danny Boyle, who had previously directed the 2000 adaptation of Garland's novel The Beach, and had also collaborated with McDonald on Trainspotting, Shallow Grave and more, then signed on to direct. While the film clearly owes a debt to George A. Romero's groundbreaking horror classic Night of the Living Dead, Alex Garland also found inspiration in some less obvious non-cinematic sources, including John Wyndham's 1951 sci-fi novel The Day of the Triffids and the Resident Evil video game series. The concept of fast-moving zombies was directly influenced by Garland's experience with gaming. He realised playing Resident Evil in a strange way, the zombies themselves weren't particularly threatening because they moved so slowly. The tension didn't come from the zombies, it came from the fact that you didn't have many bullets to deal with them. And so he thought, what if the zombies moved as quickly as the dogs? When the film hit cinemas in 2002, it wasn't just the fast-moving infected that felt fresh. Danny Boyle and cinematographer Anthony Don Mantle shot some of the movie using a Canon XL1, a consumer-grade camcorder costing around $4,000. That recorded footage onto mini DV tapes. Boyle chose to shoot the film using this because of the harshness of the video quality. He believed the rough-edged look would lend the film a gritty, realistic feel that enhanced the overall story. The film's most iconic shots, Cillian Murphy wandering through a deserted London past landmarks like Big Ben, weren't created with CGI, but with a far cheaper technique, waking up early. They arranged for police to close roads near the shooting locations at 4 a.m, allowing filming to take place for about an hour. Boyle has noted that some shots, like the overturned bus outside 10 Downing Street, would be nearly impossible to achieve today. He said they only got away with it by the skin of their teeth and the inventiveness of Mark Tildesley, the production designer, who swore blind that he could get it in and out of there in 15 minutes. And he proved himself right. Initially, they did a test screening of the deserted London scenes without any music playing, just eerie silence. When it came to the part that shows Cillian Murphy try to open the door of an abandoned Mercedes and the alarm going off, the audience jumped out of their skin. Danny Boyle has said he was advised not to keep the scene like that for fear of an audience member having a heart attack, so the music was subsequently added. Robert Carlyle was originally offered the role of Major Henry West, but had to decline due to other commitments. The part ultimately went to Christopher Eccleston. Eccleston suited the role perfectly, and Carlyle eventually took on the character of Cowardly Don in the sequel 28 weeks later. Ewan McGregor was chosen to play Jim, but he and director Danny Boyle had a falling out during the production of The Beach, where McGregor was initially set to star before being replaced by Leonardo DiCaprio. When that fell through, the role was offered to Ryan Gosling, who had to turn it down due to scheduling conflicts. James McAvoy auditioned for a role in the film, though it turned out to be quite different from what he had anticipated. He had believed he was being considered for one of the lead roles, but later discovered he was actually reading for a featured zombie. Reflecting on the moment, he said he had thought, "Brilliant, bring it on. It has come to this. I've made it all the way to the bloody middle." As his CV mentioned acrobatics, Danny Boyle had asked whether he could do a backflip, explaining that he wanted to see how the zombies might move. McAvoy obliged, performing the backflip, and spent around 20 minutes chatting, but still didn't land a role. In the end, Boyle chose largely unknown and obscure actors for most of the leading roles, aiming for the film to stand on its own merits rather than star power. Before production, Cillian Murphy, Naomi Harris, Noah Huntley, and Megan Burns were virtually unheard of. Murphy and Huntley had had only minor film roles, Harris was known solely from British television, and Burns had just one previous acting credit. The only well-known actors cast were Brendan Gleeson and Christopher Eccleston. 28 Days Later isn't the first film to feature running zombies, despite often being credited as such. However, it certainly popularised and elevated the idea, thrusting it firmly into the mainstream. Depending on your definition of running, there's one chasing a car in Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and there are fast zombies in 1985's Return of the Living Dead. Interestingly, Romero never referred to his creatures as zombies, he called them ghouls, and neither did Danny Boyle, who terms his as infected. The scenes of joy and hope while they are enjoying a picnic weren't as easy to film as you might think. This scene was filmed on one of the darkest days in recent history, the 11th of September 2001. The cast found it particularly strange and more than a little unsettling to shoot joyous moments in the immediate aftermath of the World Trade Center attacks. Some of the physical symptoms of the Ebola virus, such as rashes, bleeding and red eyes, inspired the creation of the rage virus depicted in the film. While Ebola itself does not cause psychosis or violent rage, it was nevertheless woven into the lore of 28 Days Later. Ebola was used as a carrier during the virus's design. However, the scientists overseeing the operation failed to contain a mutation that transformed it into the rage virus. The ending audiences are familiar with, where a smiling Jim and the others appear to be rescued while sheltering in a cottage in England's Lake District, is just one of 4 known endings planned for the film. The original ending saw Selena and Hannah fail to save Jim in a hospital, concluding with the 2 women walking out alone. Test audiences found it too bleak and felt certain the pair would soon be killed. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have emphasised that the hospital ending is the real one, and that the more uplifting finale was ultimately chosen due to the strong response from focus groups. A variation on this ending features Jim dreaming of the pre-apocalyptic bike accident that put him in a coma, the event that opens the film, but dying regardless. Then there's the so-called radical alternative ending, which was never filmed but was storyboarded during post-production. In this version, rather than Hannah's father Frank dying, Jim undergoes a full blood transfusion to save him after the group discovers a secret lab at the military blockade. The scene featuring an explosion at the Canary Wharf petrol station was meticulously planned in advance, with all the necessary paperwork in place. However, things still went awry on the day of shooting. Somehow the police were not informed about the scheduled explosion, prompting them to dispatch the fire brigade, who believed they were responding to a real incident. When Jim, Selena and Hannah first enter the manor where the soldiers have established their fortress, a Roman statue of the Laocoon group stands prominently in the centre. In Virgil's Aeneid, Laocoon was a Trojan priest who was attacked by giant serpents sent by the gods, warning, "Do not trust the horse, Trojans, whatever it is. I fear the Greeks, even bearing gifts." His presence is significant as it foreshadows the soldiers' betrayal and hidden agendas. When Jim and the group travelling by taxi stop at a roadside diner on their way to Manchester, Jim is attacked by an infected boy inside. A voice says, "I hate you," but the child's mouth doesn't move in sync with the words. Danny Boyle later said this was a result of an audio error. This moment is unique as it is the only time in both films that any of the infected are heard speaking. 28 Days Later boasts a few blunders. When they are travelling along the motorway to Manchester, if you look very closely, another car can be seen driving along. After Frank is killed, in the shot where one of the soldiers walks up to his body, a cameraman can clearly be seen in the corner of the screen by one of the blockade walls. And after establishing that London's electrical power has completely failed, how are the lights on at the supermarket? Megan Burns had only one previous film credit before this movie, appearing as Teresa in Liam from 2001. Danny Boyle chose her for the role of Hannah based solely on her strong performance in that film. After 28 days later, Burns retired from acting, opting not to pursue a full-time career in film and instead focusing on her passion for music and singing. She launched a music career under the name Betty Curse, with her highest UK chart position reaching number 116 in 2006. She did return to the screen in 2018 for the short film Intruders, but has had no further roles since. Inspired by the film, a company called Slingshot developed a live-action role-play game titled 2.8 Hours Later. Touring various cities across the UK, players had to evade the infected as they made their way through a series of checkpoints. The game grew so popular that due to liability insurance costs and other factors, it eventually became financially unviable and was sadly shut down. Naomi Harris and Danny Boyle developed a backstory for her character that was ultimately left out of the film. According to this unseen history, her character was hardened by the traumatic experience of having to kill her infected parents to save her baby brother, only to later discover that he too had become infected. The film sparked a creative ripple beyond the screen. The graphic novel 28 Days Later, The Aftermath bridges the gap between the original film and 28 weeks later. It's divided into 4 stories ranging in setting from shortly before the outbreak to several months afterwards. There was also the 28 Days Later comic book series published by Boom Studios. The series follows on from the events of the film, initially taking place in the gap between it and the sequel, much like the graphic novel. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about 28 Days Later. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.